American Pacific Mortgage is a multi-state corporation supported by mortgage professionals who live and work here in the Treasure Valley. The office is at 8921 Hackmore Drive, just off South Maple Grove. American Pacific Mortgage treats you as an individual, not a number. They are a local equal housing lender with underwriters who know the area. Finding the right loan for you is the goal. They have a wide range of loan products: FHA, VA, refinance, home equity, and reverse mortgages for seniors. More on the web at thelendingspot.com or phone 629-4959, NMLS number 1850.
And now, your friend in the real estate business, John Adamson.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of Property Line Today. We had so many questions come in this week. We're going to jump right in and start answering the questions that you sent us at propertylinetoday.net or called in at 830-2557. Before we start answering the questions, remember that we're doing workshops for reverse mortgages and workshops for first-time home buyers to go over how all the different loans work. And those are going to be the second Wednesday of every month in the morning. Also like to announce that I've just recently been appointed as one of Glenn Beck's agents I trust. And there's only two of us in southwestern Idaho, so I wanted to let you know. And Treasure Valley Community TV is going to allow their TV producers to help realtors and homeowners do videos for their homes. Nearly 90% of all the home searches start online, and homes with videos tend to sell much faster than homes with just pictures. So if any of that's interest, go to propertylinetoday.net and we'll pass it on. Now to the questions. Well, folks, this is why we do Property Line Today. It's to answer any questions that you have on buying, selling, or investing in real estate. And these are the questions that you've sent us at propertylinetoday.net or called in during the show at 830-2557. And this week I've got Curtis back to help answer the questions. Last week you couldn't make it in because you had I know you went to Sun Valley to teach the reverse mortgage class, but
yes,
then you also had a son's basketball game?
Right.
How did he do?
They won. They've lost one game all season, so go Bishop Kelly. That's all
Bishop
we can
Kelly.
say. Go BK.
Okay. You want to take the first question?
Sure. The first one is from Crystal Brook. How do I deduct the points I paid on my 30-year mortgage?
Well, Crystal, I'm sure there's various ways to deduct. The way I do it is I show it as interest. When I fill out the taxes and it shows, mortgage interest paid, well, points is a finance charge. The thing you have to be kind of careful about is on some costs, IRS, if you're a homeowner, they want you to wait till you sell the home or refinance the home to claim the points. Now, if you're buying a home as an investment, you can go ahead and write off the interest and the points in the year. So you're going to want to check with your accountant. The other thing you're going to want to check is how the loan officer reports his loan origination fee. That's a finance charge, and most of the time they'll show that as a finance charge. So that's one of the nice things. You'll have any of the interest that you paid the year, plus the points, and if it's worded correctly, the loan origination fee that you're going to be able to deduct as interest paid. But check with your accountant. If it's your primary residence, they may tell you you're going to have to wait till you refinance the home or sell the home. But I normally just write it off as interest. Is that how you handle it?
Yes, and I would suggest, obviously, that's more of a tax accountant CPA question. So when you get your taxes done this year, talk to your CPA and see, like I said, it partly depends on whether it's an investment property, but your primary residence, they're going to look over, you want to take in what they call your HUD-1 settlement statement, which is your closing statement that'll show all your costs and fees. And they'll go down through that and show you how that can be written off.
And they do make a difference for whether it's your home or it's a rental, for instance, like in repairs. If you make a repair to the home, you don't get to do anything with that till you sell or refinance, whereas if you're an investor, that becomes an expense that if it's under a certain dollar amount, you can just expense off as an expense on the property. Gary O. sent us this question. Is it really worth spending more dollars to go green?
Well, Gary, most of the time I've found that it typically has a very long-term payout. Typically at least 10 or 15 years has been my experience to break even. And of course, depends on what you do, what your return is, how long it takes to break even, but sharpen your pencil on it. The other thing is what's your conscience worth. Some people are very much, if you're in Oregon and Portland, a lot of those areas, it's worth a lot, especially on resale if you've got a, quote, green home. Over in Idaho, it's not nearly as important, other than it does eventually, pay with reduced utilities and reduced expense, but it does take usually quite a bit of time to break even.
And even if you read some of the brochures that on some of these green appliances, they'll say it'll pay for itself in 5 years or 10 years or 15. They're basically taking the cost savings and dividing that into the extra cost to figure out, how long, but they're not taking into account the time value of money. And, the time value of money says $1 today is worth more to me than $1 I'm going to receive 5 or 10 years from now. So really you have to kind of keep that in mind. If they say, well, you'll have everything paid back in 5 years, if you were to take that time value of money, you might really be looking at a much longer term. Now, some of the things I see people do, like I think it's called zero or landscaping, where they take all the grass up and put down bark and cactus and that kind of stuff, so they don't have the, to pay to water the lawn or mow the lawn. That's going to give you some immediate savings. But if you wanted to turn around and sell the home, it could take away from the value of the home to more than offset any savings you had. So you might want to end up having to redo the landscaping when it comes time to sell the property. And a lot of the green things that I see with, things up on the roof and alongside the house, detract from the beauty of the house, and in return reduce the overall value of the house. So you need to kind of, on some of these green property, green things, you need to say, how's it going to affect the look of my house? Because it may save you money monthly, but when it comes time to sell the home, it's not going to be that attractive, and you probably won't get as much. Let's see, we have one from Sharon. You want to take Sharon?
Yeah. When does the realtor get paid if they arrange a lease purchase? Mine wants paid now instead of when the buyer actually closes on the deal. Well, Sharon, the deal doesn't really close until the loan is paid off. The lease is just basically a rental agreement with an intention to buy. And so, of course, any realtor would want paid up front, but that's typically not how I see these deals happen, because the deal doesn't really consummate until they actually close.
Oh, I've never written up a lease deal I didn't get paid for up front. The way I look at it would be if American Pacific Mortgage says, Curtis, thank you so much for originating the loan, but I don't know if those people are going to be able to make their loan payment over the next 30 years. Let's wait 30 years, and if they do, then I'll go ahead and pay you your loan origination fee. You wouldn't stay in business very long. When the realtor goes all the work to find a buyer, get the money for the option deposit, comes up with the rent, does all the forms, you've got somebody in there bringing income in. If you had it rented and a property manager, that property manager is going to, right from the get-go, going to take his property management fee, the application fee, the advertising fee, all the other things that they charge as soon as the renter moves in. They're not going to wait to see if he stays the full 3 or 4 years of the rental agreement. So under a good lease to own, there should be enough money in the deposit, Sharon, and it should be non-refundable deposit. That way, you have somebody that really has a skin in the game, a vested interest, to pay the realtors their fee, any closing costs that you would make. And then I would hope for enough extra that if for some reason they don't exercise their option to buy and they have to move out, that you'd have like first and last month's rent and maybe enough money to thoroughly clean the house, maybe put in new carpet, that sort of thing. But you can't expect somebody, it's as hard to do a lease to own or an owner will carry transaction than it is to sell a regular home.
Probably harder.
It is. And to expect a realtor to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get paid, you may as well not even offer terms like that then.
And I have seen them both ways. So
I think a lot of realtors don't do lease to own or owner will carry because they're afraid that they're going to have to wait 1, 2, 3, 5 years to get paid. And if that's the case, it's just because that realtor doesn't know how to structure the deal so that everyone wins. And but if the realtor's doing his job right, there should be enough money to pay the commissions from the deposit that the lease-to-own person puts down.
And Sharon, if there's not enough money there to be able to pay all of that up front, then you probably need to find a different buyer.
Or a different realtor knows how to structure the transaction. Let's say that it's a great deal, but they don't have enough money to pay the commissions. Well, then what you need to do is maybe go back to the buyer and say, for the first year, you're going to have to pay an extra $300 a month. And then you could assign that extra money each month coming in to pay the commissions. I've done that sometimes if, I'm trying to help the people who's not quite enough cash. Maybe take half the commission out of the deposit and then have the buyer pay extra and let that extra go to pay for the commission. So there's a lot of different ways to structure these lease-to-owns. And again, we have a whole page on propertylinetoday.net talking about seller financing, lease-to-own, owner will carry. And on all those different plans that we show on the webpage, the realtor's going to get paid. So,
Next one's from Martin.
Martin says, I like looking at houses, but when I'm out looking, if I say something about the house not being right, my agent gathers everything up and we head to the next property. How am I to know what I like, or how is he to know my likes if we don't take a hard look at every property? Plus, I like to go back and review what I didn't like about a home to better understand if the houses I do like is better. Should I just say slow down? Martin, there's a lot of people out there that just love to look at houses. We're getting a lot of the baby boomers out. Some of them are retired, and it's fun looking at houses. It's fun seeing how people decorate their houses, the colors they use, how they maintain their property. But Martin, if you know what you want and you haven't found it, time in real estate is valuable. The time is of the essence.
Time is money.
You bet it is, for the realtor, but also for you, Martin. I mean, while you're out analyzing everything, interest rates could go up, home prices could go up. The house that you want to find could get an offer on it. I'll be honest, Martin, a lot of times when I'm out showing people, I'll give them, all the paperwork ahead of time, show them which homes we're going to go look at. But if we walk in the front door and there's something obvious that they've said, I will not buy a home if it has this. And we walk in, and even though we looked at the pictures and read we didn't know it had this, and we know you're not going to buy it, I would normally say, take the listing information I gave you, wad it up, or hand it to me, I'll throw it away, so that you don't have this analysis through paralysis. So many people look at so many papers, they forget about the ones they like, the ones they don't like, and they just get confused. After over 25 years in this business, I can only look at about 7 to 10 homes a day and keep it straight. And I've read stories that an average person can only keep 3 to 5 homes straight. So, Mark, if you're out looking at a bunch of homes, you're just going to get so confused. So I would recommend, if you want to keep anything, keep the maybes and go back and compare the maybes and say, Mr. Realtor, these are my maybes, and this is why I didn't choose these particular ones, so we can get a better feel for them. But boy, if you get into a home and you know that it has one of the things that you've definitely said you don't want in a house, don't waste any time.
Yeah,
that's
Martin,
my opinion.
And Martin, just a couple of things to add to that from my personal experience. I've bought 7 or 8 properties over the years, and you're right. You look at 7 to 10 in a day; they all start to run together. I used to take a clipboard, the listing sheet. I would take meticulous notes, address, and everything I did and didn't like about each property with that, so that while I was there, and it just takes a couple of minutes to make sure if it had any chance that you could go back to it and you could remember it, because by the time you've looked at 10 properties, you're right, they all do run together. And it is fine to say slow down a little bit,
Sure.
but just not much. Take 2 or 3 minutes after you looked at a property, take very good notes. In this day and age, when you can have a computer or an Apple with you, just type up whatever you want, take some pictures, drop it in a file in it, and go on to the next one. There's a happy medium in there somewhere with looking at the property, making notes, and not wasting too much time on a property that you don't have interest in.
And if it's a maybe and you're going to think about it a little bit, nearly everyone has a cell phone with a camera.
There you go.
It is so easy. If it's a maybe, just really quick walk through the house with your cell phone and go back and look at it on your cell phone, because it's going to be better than the pictures you see on the listing, and you're going to know it's in the maybe file. Now, another trick, Martin, that I use a lot is we'll start off at a particular home, and if it's a maybe, then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, this is our number one choice. This is the best home we've looked at, and it would be, if this is the only house, this is the home we're going to buy. Then we'll go look at the next home, and we'll say, is this home as nice as our number one choice? No, it's not. Then I'll say, well, let's just throw that one away. Now, if we go to the third house, and the third house is much nicer than the one we're going to buy, if there's none nicer, then we'll put that one on top. So now you have one that's better than the one on the bottom, but the one on the bottom is one you might have considered buying. That way, you're always going to have just the paperwork of the homes you're interested in, and not a bunch of paperwork on homes you would never consider putting in an offer. I think RJ is yours.
The agent I'm signed up with tells me everything he likes about the neighborhood and the house we are previewing. I don't care if he likes it, because all that matters is if I like it.
Do you ever have people, now, when they go in to apply for a loan and you say, I like a 15-year loan, or I like a 5-year adjustable rate, or I would never do anything but a 30-year, and then have a reaction like, well, I don't care what you like, but I'm the one getting the loan?
Yeah, it's a little bit different in the lending side, because I don't have the options. They can't look at 10 different loan products the way they can look at 10 different houses. It's more, okay, what is your preference? A 15-year has a higher payment and a shorter term. Here's a 20-year, here's a 30-year, here's a conventional FHA and RD, and I'm about done. And usually it's fairly obvious with people what direction we're heading by the time I get together with them on the loan product. Whereas if you've got, a lot of houses to look at, 10, 20, or 30 of them that meet their 3-bedroom, 2-bath requirement, you have a lot more options that you have to go through and a lot more things that you have to see.
I tell you, I hear my associates talking about showing people 10, 15, 20 homes, and I just kind of shake my head. If you've sat down at the agent's office, gone over where you work, where you go to school, what your hobbies are, what were the things that you really wanted when it comes time to buy a home, things that you just can't stand about homes, then they do your homework. You shouldn't be looking at that many homes. They should be able to pick out the top 5 to 10, and you need to trust that agent that they're doing their homework, and they're only going to hopefully have everything that you want and don't have any things you don't want. But RJ, I've actually had people come up and say, John, I don't care what you like about the house. I'm the one buying it. And when I go around saying, I like this, I like that, I'm not saying John Adamson likes this or likes that. I'm saying John Adamson, a real estate professional with over 25 years of experience, is telling you that a corner lot is better than an interior lot. A home maybe with vaulted ceilings is going to attract more people than a standard flat ceiling. Carpeting in living rooms is considered better than pergo flooring. You may want pergo flooring. It's just pointing out what the market wants, so that you know that if you ever wanted to sell or rent it, you're getting a home that other people are going to like. And it's not necessarily the home I like personally, but I'm trying to point out the pros and the cons, maybe why it has value. For instance, I like it because it has an extra half bath. It has a 3-car garage. It has a family room. I like that because it increases the value of a house, that house, over a house that doesn't have those things. So it's not like I want to move in, I'm going to go out and put in an offer before you, RJ. It's just that, a good agent's going to kind of point these things out. And I guess some of us get in the habit of saying, I like this, when you should probably rephrase it in a different way. as a real estate professional, I would recommend this or something. I don't know.
And the last two questions, John, both RJ and Martin, they're both having some communication issues with their agent on what they want.
Sure.
You know, you need to be really clear. The agent and the lender work for you. You're driving that bus.
Sure.
Okay, but you need to tell them what you want, whether it's a 30-year loan or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath or whatever it is. You need to be really clear with them. And as you go along, it's okay to correct them and tell them what you do or don't like. Like, I don't care what you're thinking or pointing out. I'll make that decision myself or whatever it may be. Be nice, be polite, but be clear, because we all want the same thing. We want what you want. We're just all trying to figure that out.
And RJ, don't be shocked if, what I just told you. They should have done their homework. They should know what you want, you don't want. And then you go look at the homes. It has some of the things you don't want. Like, I told you I don't like dark cabinets. I told you I don't like white kitchens with white appliances. Some things aren't available to the agent unless they see the house. And it's very difficult if you're dealing with one of the top agents who's probably working with several buyers. You couldn't possibly go out and look at 40, 50 homes a week to narrow down everything. So if you end up looking at a house that isn't quite perfect, well, that's why you go out and look. It's not always exactly the way it looks on the pictures. There's one of my favorite songs. It talks about sometimes things just quite aren't as big as the picture on the back of the cereal box. And it's so true, Let's see here. And I do appreciate when you guys take the time to go to www.propertylinetoday.net and send us these questions or call us at 830-2557. Is it Marge or Margie? I think it's Margie. Margie says, the salesman we're working with is also tied up with a lender. He is nice enough, but we're going to go through the bank we have been with for years. I don't want him to feel bad, but he keeps asking, how are things going with Gale? Are you getting everything turned into Gale? Should I just say we're not going to use Gale?
Well, Marge, that's exactly what you should say. Is if you've chosen a lender, and all realtors have favorites and have lenders, because not all buyers have a lender when they show up. But if you have a preferred bank lender, you need to just communicate that to the agent. Don't dance around the bush. Just say, we have chosen to use our local bank and we're not going to use Gale, and I have that information in him, and that will be the end of it. It's your choice on who you use for an agent and for a lender. And the agent can't dictate what lender you use.
Now, one of the biggest problems, we even had a question last week or 2 weeks ago about, one of the main problems in today's real estate market is people don't tend to get the information turned into the lender in a timely fashion. It's kind of like, they don't need to know that. They don't need that. They're just asking for way too much information to approve my loan. I've never had to share this kind of stuff with a lender in the past. This guy's an idiot. He don't know what he's doing. Well, the truth of the matter is a lot of information has to be turned into the lender nowadays to get approved for a loan. They're asking for things that they normally never asked for 10, 15 years ago. And a good realtor, if he's kind of the conductor of the transaction, he's going to want to make sure, he's going to want to be able to communicate with your lender and make sure that you're getting things turned in, the appraisal's getting ordered, the docs have been sent over to the title company, that sort of thing, to kind of stay on top. So, Marge, I think your agent was just trying to make sure that you weren't going to have any troubles with the loan, but if you're not going to use Gale, tell him we're not going to use Gale. We've done business with this banker for many, many years, and we're going to use him. But get with your realtor and say, I'll make sure he sends you a loan approval letter. So if it comes time to bid a home, your realtor may not know your friend at all. He'll have that letter in file. And if you've discussed with the local lender the type of loan that you're probably going to get, have him do a good faith estimate and send that over to your realtor to put in your file. So if a time comes to put in an offer, You'll know what that lender's closing costs are. And so he'll know what to ask the buyer, ask the seller to pay on behalf of the buyer. So if you're not going to use Gale, Marge, and you're going to go with your regular bank, let your lender know, introduce your realtor to your lender so that they can communicate and he can kind of be watching out, asking the questions you may not know to ask your lender. It's just going to make things go smoother.
And to finish up that, Marge, as well, we asked for probably double to triple the documentation that we asked for 5 to 7 years ago on a file.
Well,
Just
not
get
your
used to-
company, just
No,
lenders
the
in
Fannie
general.
Mae, Freddie Mac, the ones that we have to answer to, conventional loans, whatever. Literally the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed. To give you an example, I photocopied a bank statement last year, and I cut the cents column off on the bank statement.
Really?
And we sold the loan to an investor, and the investor kicked the file back and said, we won't buy it. The cents column is missing on the bank statement. And the reason I bring that up as an example is just because the documentation has to be much more thorough, and I have people object fairly often, and I understand that, and they say it's none of the lender's business, or it's a violation of your privacy. And all I can say, all of that may be true, and if you don't provide it, you don't close. So you just need to be patient and give the lender what they ask promptly, or it will delay your closing, or you won't close at all. And don't fight them, don't resist it. They're not asking for any more than absolutely necessary, but it's just required in this day and age.
One of the common complaints, I hear this every month. Somebody will say, my lender just called up and he was mad because I didn't give him page 2 and 4 and 6 of my bank statement. And John, they're blank pages. The truth of the matter is the rules say the lender has to have a copy
All pages.
of every single page. And if he's got page 1, page 3, page 5, he's going to want to know where page 2 and page 4, even if they're blank pages.
Well, very often I'll have a customer bring in a bank statement that's 6 pages long, and it says page 1 of 6, 2 of 6.
Sure.
They'll bring me in the 5 pages, and page 6 is blank. And unfortunately, even if it says on page 6, page intentionally left blank, I have to have it. The lender is required to have all pages on the bank statements going back for typically 60 days or 2 months.
But I hear that all the time. Why do they have to have a copy of a blank page?
And the reason is because.
Because. There you go. Let's see, where are we here on the questions? Is it Bernice?
Yes, I like the low rates and I like the low fuel prices, and I'm feeling now might be a good time to buy. I don't understand how rates and gas prices are set, but I'm sure you do. Is it a temporary or long-term thing? I'm afraid as soon as I start looking, the economy will go haywire again. Well, Bernice, nobody knows for sure what rates and gas prices are going to do. But
I wish I had a crystal ball.
we all
sometimes.
wish that we did, but I can tell you that chances are, rates right now are in the 3s, often in the low 3s, depending on the loan product.
And there's as a professional, I never in a million years, a couple of years ago, we had 3.5. When they went up to 4, 4.5, I thought, well, I saw it in my lifetime. I'll never see it again. And here they're down the 3.5% range.
I'm locking government loans right now at 3.25 on a 30-year fixed loan, which helps people's payments. And so chances are, Bernice, there's a lot better chance that rates are going to go up than they're going to go down when they're already in the low to mid 3s. And so I would just say, don't wait. If you're a gambler, don't wait, because chances are much better that they're going to go up than they're going to go down. And that's both with gas and rates. You kind of have the best of both worlds right now. And rates, unfortunately, can be fairly volatile. Rates could be at 3.25 today, and next week be at 3.5 or 3.75. Usually it's fairly incremental, but if they want to go up a half a point in a matter of days, they certainly can, and I have seen it on occasion in the past. And a half a point, if you missed out on that, there's a good chance you won't get that back.
Well, and with interest rates, it's not like an event that's unchangeable. You could go in and lock in your 3.5% rate. Now, up until closing, if that rate was to drop, you could maybe pay a fee, or some lenders may allow you to relock at the lower rate. Let's say you go ahead and close. Well, if it's that substantial of a drop, you can always go in on most loans and ask for a rate reduction or streamlined. If it's FHA, VA, or rural housing, get the lower rate. So it's not maybe a forever thing. If you think it's going to save you enough money, it might be worth refinancing to get the lower rate. So I wouldn't have they're low. Bernice, they're lower than I ever thought they would be. And all of the economists, in fact, at the first of the show, we talked about Fannie Mae's prediction. Fannie Mae, they're thinking they should be 4.5 and maybe 5.5 by next year. So when you have the top economists in the country saying that, you know it's probably a pretty good bet. As to gas prices, come on, we know that gasoline's a finite product. Hopefully with the gas pipeline, the extra things that we're doing with Canada, I've heard of a pipe that may be going from Russia across the Bering Strait into Alaska that might give us, you know, several hundred years of natural gas. All of that might keep gas prices low. But I think you have to be smart enough to know that we've seen gas at $4 a gallon. It could go back to $4 a gallon. What I kind of pick up, Bernice, is kind of a fear. And I hear it expressed so many different ways. What happens if we buy the home and I lose my job? What happens if we buy the home and in 2 years we find out the roof has to leak? What happens if, I mean, life is filled with uncertainty. And so what you have to do, Bernice, is look at the here and now. You know, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. And you have to say, based on present circumstances, would this be good for me? If it is, go for it, and then trust that, you know, things will work out. They normally do. And I wouldn't use the fear of gas prices going back up or the fear that you might have got a lower interest rate. Over time, I'll tell you, interest rates will be higher. Over time, gas prices will be higher. Over time, home prices will be higher. So right now in the present would be a good time to think, maybe I should go ahead and buy.
Yeah. And Bernice, for those people out there who are waiting for that perfect time to buy with everything, guess what? It'll never happen.
And those people,
it won't. Those people never buy because they're so scared of what if gas prices go up or interest rates increase. Just if you think you're ready, you need to apply and get pre-approved and go out there and see if you can find a home and a payment that will fit your needs, because it's not a question of if rates and prices go up, just when.
And you know, the other thing I suggest, a lot of people nowadays go out with the thing, I don't want to put in an offer on a house because as soon as I put in an offer on a house, I'm either going to find something better or I'll be stuck with it. Just because you put in an offer doesn't mean the seller is going to take your offer. So, you know, you may have to put offers in on more than one home. A lot of times people wait and find the perfect house or the nearly perfect house, and they put in an offer thinking they're going to get it, and they don't get it. Somebody else has thought it's a perfect house and maybe offered more or got there before you. So, you know, the whole idea is, again, we're talking about time. If you like it, get an offer in on it. You don't want to lose it because you were a day late and $1 short. The other thing I'd like to stress is a lot of people think they're going to go out and find the perfect home. And what makes a home perfect is not the house, but the people living in the house. This is one of the fun things about owning a home is you get to make it perfect for you. It's yours. If you want cabinets in the utility room and there are no cabinets, you put cabinets in. If you want your garage tape textured painted and Mr. Goodrich gray put on the floor, do it. If you want to have gardens in the backyard, put them in. You can make almost any home the perfect home if you invest in it after you buy it. Good luck, Bernice. Let's see, is it Leigh or Leah? How would you say that? Lee?
It's Lee.
Is it my turn? I'll go ahead with it. Lee says, we closed our home in July. It had new everything, but we still had a home inspection and an appraisal done. It's been less than half a year and we have a leaky roof. Should one of the professionals who inspected the property seen there was a problem and said something? Is it too late to try and recover anything from the previous owner or agent?
Lee, when you have a property inspection done and you have an appraisal done, they're of course warranting with where that property is today. And if something happened immediately afterwards, maybe like I had a hot water heater go out immediately afterwards one time and we got that replaced. But 6 months later is a long time.
And you know the old adage. The old adage is as soon as I buy it, something's going to break.
And as soon as you buy it, you own it.
And you want, and you know, old adages get to be old adages because they tend to be true. And that's why we recommend if you're buying a home, get a home warranty. Maybe have the seller provide you with a home warranty. Now, in the case of a leaky roof, it wouldn't be covered. Home warranties normally cover the furnace, the air conditioner,
Appliances.
water heater, electric, plumbing, that kind of thing. Not roofs, not foundations. But the reason they have home warranties is because those are items that tend to break within the first year of home ownership. You know, if this was a car, if Lee had gone out and bought a car 6 months ago and found out that they had a flat tire, they wouldn't be trying to go back to the dealer to get the tire fixed. I mean, maybe it was a brand new car they might, but you know, I think people have expectations on homes. Homes are just like any other asset. They do break. And there was one time similar to this. There was a house out on South Cloverdale where they bought it during the summer. Everything was okay. Then we had a real rainy winter and all of the rain gutters didn't work. And there was a question on the seller's disclosure statement, do the rain gutters, are they sound, do they work? And they had checked yes. And he was going to kind of leave it at that maybe they got filled up with leaves, maybe the wind hit something, maybe it happened after the fact. But he was telling his next door neighbor that he was having these troubles. And the next door neighbor said, you know, I told that old owner he was going to have trouble with that. He was always complaining about those gutters. Well, he took that little bit of information back to the original owner and said, you lied to me on the seller's disclosure. You knew the gutters were bad. I don't know if it would have held up in court, but the seller ended up putting in the new gutters. So, but like, you know, that's why you have the home inspection. That's why we have appraisals. That's why we have home warranties, is to make sure if we do see something wrong, we get it fixed. But a lot of times things are missed. Not a lot, but sometimes.
Well, and I don't think necessarily anything was missed here. It just, roofs go bad over time. We've had a fair amount of rain.
Windstorms, you know, it's
Anything like hail, wind, any of those type of things can trigger a roof to leak. So I guess our answer is, Lee, you just need to have the roof fixed. We don't think you really have any legal recourse.
I don't.
To go back to the previous agent or seller. Too much time has elapsed. And that's unfortunately part of the, quote, joys of home ownership, is that when things go wrong like that, if you don't have a home warranty for appliances and things, you have to fix it. And in the case of a roof, you just need to get a couple of estimates and have them fix it.
If you had maybe had a roof inspection done and a professional roofer said, this is going to last 3 years, you might. But even then, I don't think you'd have any legal recourse. I'd like to just leave you with a thought, Lee. You know, I tell everybody, if you have a wife, you're going to have wife problems. If you have kids, you're going to have kid problems. If you have a home, you'll have home problems. If you have a car, you'll have car problems. But that's part of having the blessing. You know, if you have no wife problems. No kids, no kid problems. No car problems. No house problems. I would rather deal with the problems as they come up in my life and have the blessing than not have the blessing at all.
Well, unfortunately, blessings aren't necessarily free, John.
No.
You know, quite often blessings can be quite costly, but that doesn't mean you don't buy them.
Yep. And that's just part of life. We've got quite a few questions. I'm really impressed. I mean, here it is, almost Valentine's Day, and it's not the world's best weather. Thank you, folks, for sending us your questions. I appreciate it. Jason says, I want to buy now, But the loan officer I spoke with said I had to wait 2 years because I'm a subcontractor. He probably had a short sale or something. No, I have been assured that I will have steady work for the next 2 years and have saved a large down. No one wants to rent me a home until closing if it's going to take 2 years. Are there private lenders out there that could make me a loan now? Credit, they say, is fine. My only problem is having time on the job, which is crazy because in 2 years the job will be done and I'll have to go out and find other employment, and this silly merry-go-round will continue.
Well, Jason, I have to deal with this all the time.
It's a self-employment problem.
Yes, and the rule with all loans is if you're 1099'd, or which is considered
Or
self-employment,
yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Then you have to have 2 years off of self-employment or 1099 income with 2 years of tax returns that cash flow on the income before you can be considered for the loan. And I know that seems crazy, Jason, but the problem is 80 to 90% of the people who become self-employed fail.
Yeah.
And they default on their loans, and that is just a proven fact over time. It's an indisputable fact. And so the question is, nobody knows if you're that 10 or 20% or not, so they wait until at least the 2-year mark, because at least then there's a chance that you'll be able to make your payments. And unfortunately, whatever assurances you have that says that you're going to have plenty of work for the next 2 years doesn't really mean much to a lender when you're self-employed. And so there are some options now just starting to come back for people. If you're a subcontractor and you've been in the same line of work, but you haven't been your own self-employed subcontractor for a couple of years, you do need to get a second opinion. There are just recently some alternative type loans out there. Yes, there are some private money lenders that would
Jason
consider
was
it.
an employee of the general contractor.
Now
He's a
self-employed.
subcontractor.
Yes.
They may go back and give him some credit for that.
Yes, and like Fannie and Freddie just recently changed the guidelines from having to have 2 years commission to 18 months.
Well, that's good.
So some of these guidelines have loosened up a little bit. There may be some private money available. You might be able to get a portfolio lender like a credit union to do it. The key there is if you've got a large down, at least 20%, good credit, everything else in line. So there are some options. I'd suggest you call us.
Sure.
And let us at least see if we can't help you find something. It never hurts to get a second opinion.
And that's one of the things the Real Pro Foundation encourages. That's why we have the Property Line Today webpage. Free second opinion. If you have, if you want us to take a look at your offer, want us to take a look at your good faith estimate, we'll take a look at it and give you our professional opinion. Another set of eyes on things sometimes is good. Jason, you ended your question with, and this silly merry-go-round will continue. If you do a good job where you're at right now, you're going to get probably a really good report from your current general contractor on how good your work is. But now if you go and start another job, they're going to give you that 2 years credit on the job you're on now. So it's not going to start all over again. They're going to say, well, you have 2 years as a contractor and you now have a new project that's bringing in enough money. He's not going to have to wait another 2 years on another job.
No, and that's part of what Jason doesn't understand. You've got to have 2 years being a subcontractor. We will assume you're 1099 self-employed. We understand what that means. You've got to get past that 2-year mark if you want normal, regular financing. I would caution you to be careful on your tax returns. One of the biggest problems I have with self-employment people is that they, of course, go to a CPA, have them do their taxes, and an accountant's job is to minimize your tax liability, which works out just fine, except when you're dealing with people like me, and they show in the end, they do all your write-offs, which is perfectly allowable under the IRS. You do all the write-offs, minimize your taxable income, and then you don't qualify for a loan. So be careful. As my father would say, proceed with caution, because if you do all your write-offs down to the point to where you're paying taxes on $12,000 a year or $1,000 a month, you're not going to qualify for a loan after the 2 years anyway, and that's fairly common, especially now we're going into tax season. And I tell everybody, go to your lender first and get pre-approved before you file your taxes for this year, because if something needs to be adjusted, it needs to be adjusted before you file your return, because after it's filed, it's too late, and then it's like, see you next year. And who knows where rates and prices are going to be in another year, but I can tell you one thing, you're probably not going to like them compared to where they are now.
And, we even had the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said it's an American's duty to go ahead and take every legitimate deduction they can on their taxes. But yet when you do, then it lowers the taxable income. And the thing that's just not fair for self-employed people is if you work for someone, they figure all their ratios on the gross income that you make. If you're self-employed or a contractor, they take your net income, which, that net income may have taken the gross and subtracted off your car payment, telephone, utilities, part of your house, a clothing allowance, a lot of things that you probably would have paid as an employee. The company is now paying for you, but it's making it so you're not going to get a home loan. It's just crazy.
And Jason, we talked a while back, it was all over the news not too long ago, Ben Bernanke, who was the Fed chairman for years, he resigned, and I'm sure that was a pretty significant salary
get a
position.
home loan.
Well, he became a speaker. He became newly self-employed, and even though he was charging, $50,000 per speaking engagement, he didn't have a 2-year track record, and he couldn't qualify for a home loan under normal Fannie and Freddie guidelines, and that just tells you how difficult the lending environment is right now for self-employed people. If you don't have 2 years in the current situation, you're not typically going to get a loan through the normal Fannie, Freddie, FHA channels. So call us, Jason. Let us give you a second opinion. We might have an angle that we can try and get you in before things change.
Jason, a point I'd like to make, experience does count in the practice of real estate. I had something just this past week similar that people weren't going to qualify now, but it looked almost certain they'd qualify in 2 years. And they had a big down payment. They had over $10,000 to put down on a 200 and some odd thousand. A little over 5% they had to put down, maybe 7 or 8% they could put down. We wrote up the earnest money that was going to close in 2 years. The $10,000 went to the seller. Out of that, they paid the real estate commission, but they also had enough money left over to cover, should the man move out and they'd have to clean the carpets or that sort of thing. And the person that was going to close in 2 years paid higher than going rent. They paid a couple $100 a month more. So it increased the seller's cash flow. And he even was allowed the $200 to count up over the 2 year period to pay for their closing costs. So, you don't always have to go through a lender right now. If you have a sizable down payment, money talks. If you have a good job, a seller's going to take that into account. If you can make it worth their while on a monthly basis, you can maybe find somebody that will go ahead and sell you the house on a lease-to-own contract, or an owner will carry contract, as long as you make them feel safe that you are going to be able to refinance in 2 years. And yes, there are private individuals that loan money, but right now the going rate for private money is between 10 and 12%.
Correct.
So I just don't, I wouldn't do that, Jason. It's just not worth it.
All right, the next one is from Lou.
Oh, I thought that said IU. Okay, Lou.
Is it possible that rates for home loans could go down further? Yeah. I heard that in Europe, banks were loaning money near zero, and some car dealers are starting to offer zero interest rates. Well, Lou, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show. Don't wait any longer if you're wanting to do something. I would say there's an 80% chance rates are going to go up and a 20% chance rates are going to go down much further. And so if you're thinking about buying or refinancing, just pull the trigger and get it done before things change.
And people, they hear interest and they hear zero interest. and they think, oh, I'm going to buy a home. I'm going to have to pay interest. I want zero interest. But the story that they were reading, the Europe banks are charging zero interest between other European banks.
It's the Fed rate.
Sure,
in the
it'll
US,
be like our Fed rate.
which is near zero.
I mean, rates for cars are different than houses. The interest rates are different, and they're different for different types of loans too. One of the things I see in Denver, we have an office in Denver, is a lot of the new construction right now is saying zero interest. Well, everyone goes, wow, I want to go and get a zero interest. Well, it's not zero interest forever. It's zero interest for the first year. And it's one of the things that the contractors are offering as an incentive. They're probably borrowing their money at 4%, and they're taking that interest and giving it back in lieu of lowering the price. Or
Well, they're building it into the price.
sure, they're building it in somehow.
And on cars, they do the same thing, Lou. Just to let you know, if you go buy a new car, and you go in and buy a car for $20,000, and they say it's zero interest for 48 months, somebody's paying that interest, and who's paying it is the dealership, because the company that finances the car is also the same company that builds the car.
And a lot of times, if you say, I'll pay the going interest rate, you'll get the car for less.
Yes, because that's built into the price. And so when they say zero interest on a car loan for 48 or 60 months, I can assure you it's being paid for somewhere. If you want to negotiate and say, what if I pay cash, suddenly a couple $1,000s will come off the price of the car.
Yep. Well, and it may come off the price of the house too. I mean, if the seller doesn't have to pay any closing costs, you might save 1 or 2% on the purchase price of a home.
Yeah, and so if you say instead of getting zero interest for a year on a house, if you just say I'm going to pay cash, suddenly $7,000 or $8,000 to $10,000 will magically come off the price of that house because they don't have to subsidize that interest rate for the year.
And if you get a seller that's willing to pay some closing costs, I always say, if you're interest sensitive, have what the seller's willing to pay on your behalf go towards buying down the interest rate if you can afford the closing costs yourself or add it back into the loan amount. Because the nice thing about it, if the seller uses their money to lower your interest rate, you get to take the money that they paid on your behalf and deduct it off your taxes as interest income. And you say, well, why would the IRS allow you, the buyer, to deduct the money? Well, the IRS knows you really are paying that interest. Even though the seller is buying it down or paying the points, you would have got the home for less money if they didn't. So you really are paying for it. That's why they allow you to deduct the points or the buy down to get that lower interest rate. Russell. Let's see, Russell says, with all the changes the government has made to home finance, is it still legal for people to lend money interest only? I prefer this because I always know what I have coming in the future and what I'm earning on my money. But I was told the government has made this type of loan illegal, even for individuals making loans.
Well, Russell, first of all, private individuals making loans don't have to be held to the same standard as like national banks and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So
they have passed some rules, like you can't make hundreds of loans. You
right,
only make
but
a few
if
loans
you find
each
a
year.
private individual that's willing to make you a home loan interest only, that's perfectly fine. Watch your terms, but you can certainly do that. They don't have the same restrictions if you're dealing with a private individual as if you're dealing with a regular lender. And as far as making these loans illegal, they have made them more difficult. But just recently, I've heard that some of the interest-only arms are back and that kind of thing. And I can see why you would like that. The problem is those kind of loans with 2008 and what happened before got abused. And so because of the abuse, the pendulum has swung the other way, and they're either not available at all or they're available with very restrictive terms. And Russell, the one thing I would point out is when interest rates are in the threes and you can reserve, 3.5% money for 30 years, why would you put yourself at risk with an ARM? Because even though the rate would be slightly cheaper and the payment would be lower, sooner or later that ARM is either going to go up or you're going to have to refinance it. If rates were 8%, arms are fine.
Well, I got a feeling Russell, he is the lender. So he's probably thinking, the nice thing for Russell is he could probably charge 5-6%, which is a pretty good rate of return right now. And the house payment would be the same if the buyer went out and got a 3.5% loan. So it allows Russell now to get a higher interest rate, keeps his principal intact, and he's got a happy home buyer because they don't care if they pay 3 or 4 or 5 as long as the monthly payment doesn't change. So I think what he was told, hey, they don't make interest-only loans anymore, you'll get in trouble. In fact, you're going to get in trouble as an individual making loans without a mortgage license. I've heard all of that on the street.
Well, it is true if you've done more, and you need to talk to a real estate attorney, perhaps even the Department of Finance.
Sure, that's what I would suggest. Go to the Department of Finance
and call them, and say, this is what I want to do on either side, whether you're borrowing from a private individual or you're lending it out, just so that you make sure that you're, quote, in compliance. It is true if you fall under the lines of you're working for a lender and you are not currently licensed, that making mortgage loans without a license is a felony.
Sure. Well, actually, even to offer to make mortgage loans can be a felony if you're not licensed.
But that's the idea, that you're doing them consistently, not on a private basis.
Yeah, and so Russ, there are some rules that you can only make a few loans each year. There was some talk about balloon payments. So I would, again, check with the Department of Finance because if it's interest only, there will have to be a balloon somewhere in the future. And I know that there's some rules on balloon payments. And just find out, how many loans can you make? Can they be interest only? What do I have to do in disclosing the future balloon payment so you don't make any mistakes under the new rules? It's good to hear that people are willing to loan money right now because I'll tell you, I think it's a safe way to invest your money. And if you don't want to be a landlord, it might be a really good way to invest in real estate by making mortgage loans. I'm glad we started early on the questions because we have 2 more questions and we're just about out of time. Let's jump in and try to take these last 2 real quick. Max, he says, you guys have been touting reverse mortgages, but what if I were to buy a $150,000 home, put 50% down, then bought another $150,000 home as a rental and put 50% down? If I could get $1,000 rent after expenses, would I make enough after I make the payment on the rental to make the mortgage payment on my house I would be living in?
Well, Max, I ran those numbers, and yes, you would. First of all, on a reverse mortgage, if you put 50% down on the house you're living in, you have no payment. Keep in mind all you're paying is taxes and insurance, which is typically a few $100s a month. I approximated the numbers on a $150,000 rental house with 50% down, and that payment, PITI, is going to be around $600. If you rent it for $1,000, you've got $400 a month positive cash flow to throw at the taxes and insurance on your primary residence, and you're essentially living in your primary residence totally free.
And people have been doing things. That's why they have duplexes and fourplexes. You know, you can rent out one side or the other 3 units and live there for free. The nice thing about Max's plan, you have 2 homes eventually paid for free and clear. Sure, reverse mortgages aren't for everyone, Max. They are a great incentive for a lot of people. But, if you have the capability, instead of putting half down on a house and getting a reverse mortgage, you might want to look into putting half down and then half down on a rental unit and see if the rental unit will make your house payment.
It's a great plan.
Over the long run, you might come out smelling like a rose.
And I'm going to answer this last question real quick from Hank. What if the buyer's ex-partner pays the mortgage on the home they shared? Even if the buyer is on the loan, can this be excluded from the buyer's debt to qualify for a mortgage? And the answer, Hank, is if that property was put in the divorce decree properly and that specifies that the ex-partner is to make the payments, then yes, that loan can be excluded from your debt ratio if you want to go buy another property under most circumstances.
Well, I'm glad you answered that because I didn't know. Well, folks, we got every single question answered. It took nearly the full hour. Thank you so much for going to www.propertylinetoday.net or calling us at 830-2557. Well, Curtis and I will be back next week, but until then, keep your feet on the ground, but keep reaching for the stars, and may God bless each and every one of you. Bye now.
American Pacific Mortgage is a multi-state corporation supported by mortgage professionals who live and work here in the Treasure Valley. The office is at 8921 Hackmore Drive, just off South Maple Grove. American Pacific Mortgage treats you as an individual, not a number. They are a local equal housing lender with underwriters who know the area. Finding the right loan for you is the goal. They have a wide range of loan products: FHA, VA, refinance, home equity, and reverse mortgages for seniors. More on the web at thelendingspot.com or phone 629-4959, NMLS number 1850.